Temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and
Join Time Magazine's lead education reporter alongside global educators and advocates to explore the impacts of teaching forgiveness.
I teach forgiveness because it can have a positive impact in my students' families.
It helps my students thrive in the face of adversity.
Students who can forgive are happier.
Join us to hear from teachers and thought leaders on how and why to include forgiveness in your classroom.
temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather.
New coronavirus cases emerge across the country.
Obesity rates have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.
Hello everyone, and welcome virtually to the London Academy for Excellence as part of World Education Week. My name is Alex Crossman. I am the head teacher of the LAE, as we refer to it, and I'm joined by the school's two outstanding deputies to my right and your left. I have Claudia Harrison, and to my left, your right, I have Ben Webster. And they will both be joining with me and talking more about how the school supports students into universities of repute. Just a word of housekeeping. If you have questions, we'd be very keen that this is more of a dialogue than a monologue, but could you please submit those questions as we go along during the presentation, and we'll attempt to answer as many of those as we have time for a little later in the session. I'm going to start just by giving a bit of an overview of LAE. We should probably begin with the observation that the London Academy of Excellence is not an excessively modest name for a school. We have set the bar very high for ourselves, and of course deliberately so. That is the point. We hope over the course of this presentation to convince you that we are meeting that bar and that we have some solid evidence to underpin that. So I'll start just by describing our school, and I'm mindful that we'll have colleagues here from different parts of the world. So I'll try to explain what we do and who we are in the context of the UK education system. And those of you who are joining from somewhere a little closer to LAE will hopefully just extend a little patience while we do that. So LAE is a maintained sixth form college. What that means in practice is that we are publicly regulated and that the core of our funding, though by no means all of our funding, comes from central government. We educate students from the ages of 16 to typically 18, occasionally 19, and the core of our curriculum is made up of what in UK terms are A-levels, so academic qualifications in a range of subjects, ranging from things like maths and further maths to psychology and to some of the humanities subjects, including things like history, geography, psychology. We also provide support for students who are taking tests to access specific sorts of university courses, such as medicine, such as veterinary sciences, and those universities that have entrance requirements of their own. But all of those are fairly typical features of the UK education system. And now I have to say that thumbnail description is about all that is conventional about the London Academy of Excellence. The other features of the school, the other defining features of the school, are very unusual in a UK context. I think we might in some cases argue unique. The first and most important feature is the school's mission. So the school has a profound and systemic commitment to advancing the social mobility of its students and their wider communities. We are very fortunate to be based in East London, in Stratford, which is an area of considerable economic deprivation. So our children are, of course, our young people are, of course, rich in many ways, but not typically in terms of household income, and crucially, not typically in terms of the level of university participation in the home. In fact, it's not much of an exaggeration to say that almost all of our students will be the first person in certainly their immediate family to attend a university, certainly a university of note in the UK. Now, we are aided in that mission to advance the social mobility agenda, which of course is an increasingly important mission in the light of COVID. We know over the course of the last year and a half that the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on students from the type of backgrounds that most of our students come from, both here in the UK and more widely across the world. So there's a particular urgency to that mission. And we are aided in that mission by the support of 6 schools from the independent sector, or as far as most of the world is concerned, private schools, schools outside of the direct control and supervision of central government. And that is still a fairly unusual model. That cooperation between maintained and independent schools in UK terminology is still fairly unusual. We are immensely fortunate in having the support of 6 independent schools. Those schools provide, in some cases, they directly provide additional funding for our school to make available many of the things that we do, which would otherwise be impossible. In some cases, they help us to raise funds from foundations, corporates, and other donors. In some cases, they provide us with additional expertise or access to many of the opportunities that they make available for their own students, such as guest speakers or access to events in and around their schools and in and around the country. More than anything, I think, is the philosophical perspective that they bring to bear and the commitment to a genuinely holistic model of education that has always characterised the independent school sector and perhaps has been sometimes sacrificed in the maintained sector through the drive for ever greater outcomes. I think it's also important to just provide, hopefully not too many, sort of indicators of the success that the school has achieved really in the last 9 years. School was established in 2012, so we have 8 graduating classes of young people who've gone on to UK universities. To give you some idea of the types of destinations that they've achieved, we have now well over 120 students studying at the universities of Oxford and Cambridge. We have something in excess of 400, perhaps 450 students who've gone on to study medicine, dentistry, veterinary sciences and related courses at UK universities. And we have well over 1,000 students who are attending Russell Group universities, not a unique group of outstanding universities, but a group distinguished by their excellence in research. So it's a recognised measure of achievement in a UK context. And for a school that draws so heavily from students with no family background or family tradition of engagement with higher education, that is quite an exceptional achievement, albeit one that tinges us with a slight degree of sadness. Clearly, we would be in a happier condition as a country and as an education system if achievement like that were slightly more widespread. But that's the achievement we've racked up in the course of the last several years. I'm now going to hand over to my colleagues who are going to talk in more detail about how we've achieved some of those outcomes or supported some of those young people towards those destinations.
Thank you, Alex. So I'm the Deputy Head Academic, and I thought I'd just talk to you a little bit about our academic vision that Alex was talking about and how on the ground in practical terms that plays out for my role as Academic Deputy Head. And there are 3 areas I think that all 6 forms would have in common and are probably transferable in the wider context as well. And those are our curriculum, our teaching and learning, and the way in which we manage that progression to university that Alex was talking about. So first of all, our curriculum statement is written on our walls at LAE. It is that we provide an extended curriculum that, together with academic and wider enrichment and a co-curricular programme, provides students with the opportunity to leave LAE as independent, confident learners who are ready to make a positive difference in the world. Our curriculum is really carefully constructed so that the subjects and subject combinations provide students with the knowledge and skills that they need to go on to university, and not just to get in, not to get those good grades that they need to get in, to make a real success of their university life when they get there. We send around 15% of each year group off to Oxford and Cambridge. As Alex said, another significant chunk of students go off to medical schools, about another 20%, and most of the other students will be going off to those Russell Group universities like Imperial and LSE, internationally recognised universities. And our students will go on to make a positive difference in the world. It is about their own journey, their own intellectual and social mobility, but it's also about them going off and making a difference in the world. Our curriculum is based on A levels. They need those in order to progress to university, and they give a good foundation. But we also provide academic enrichment as well, and I think that's what makes us really special. They have a series of lectures. All students have an entitlement to academic literacy and oracy programme, and they all have research skills and access to project qualifications that they can do alongside their A levels. So they all engage with this during their time at LAE. It makes for a very intensive, academically enriching experience while they're here. And that brings me to my second point, which is the teaching and learning. That something I think is transferable is really our focus on the expertise of our teachers. It's absolutely critical that we have subject specialists in all our departments, and our subject leaders, the heads of department, are nearly all A-level examiners with a very rigorous focus on what students need to be able to do in terms of meeting the assessment objectives to get good grades at the end of the day. They have students who have a really deep understanding of what they need to do in their terminal exams, and teachers will track their progress across 2 years here at a very granular level with sort of question level analysis. And that drives progress for all students. Teachers all know exactly where all their students are. And just as importantly, though, they teach the skills, knowledge and excitement about learning and excitement about subjects that they'll need at university when they do have a lot more autonomy and independence in their own learning journey. And also at a department level, teachers make sure that that enrichment that sits around the A-levels is there as well, with trips. They'll organise lectures from outside speakers, organise conferences with partner schools, so students aren't just in their LAE bubble, they will go out into the wider world and meet other people who are academically excited. So we're building that kind of the intellectual capital, you might call it. And then the third thing is this progression to universities to build the social and intellectual capital for future success. Ben is going to talk more about the social capital and the sort of co-curricular programme that we have at LAE. All sixth form provision will have university guidance and processes, and of course we do that in common with everybody. I think what makes us a little bit different is that our students come to us with an enormous diversity of social capital already. Most of our students speak 2 languages, many speak more than 2 languages. They have a really rich cultural capital that they bring to LAE, and we have a lot in place that means that students can share that and learn from each other and really drive forward academic excellence together. Although students come out with these very competitive A-level results, it's not a competitive environment, it's a collegiate environment academically. We support students in making progress towards university applications through our Scholars programme. Scholarships are awarded throughout the 2-year programme for academic excellence. They can be awarded for general excellence, but also for specific subject excellence as well. So we have maths scholarships and modern languages scholarships, and those will go towards grants for trips, overseas trips, work experience, lectures, books, membership of scholarly societies and things like that. I think another thing that makes us really special is Alex was talking about the numbers that have gone on to top universities, and that gives us an incredible alumni network, which normally you would associate with perhaps the private schools or schools that have been much longer established than us. And we get our alumni involved in the progression and academic journeys of our current students as well. And I suppose I'll just finish with a case study of one of our students who's typical of our LA students, who's a boy called Asif, who's just left us to go on to university. And he came to the UK aged 14 as an unaccompanied refugee, minor refugee from Afghanistan. And he did incredibly well through his GCSE schooling, came to us and did 3 A-levels with us, and he's gone on to Oxford University now to do history and economics, and he's a sanctuary scholar, which is a scholarship that Oxford give to a handful of refugees every year. And he's by no means unusual for our students. They come here, they make huge progress, they bring as much to us as we give to them, and it makes for a very rich academic environment.
Thank you, Gloria. I'm going to move, we're going to have questions afterwards, so I'm going to move immediately to Ben Webster, who's going to talk a bit about the pastoral life of the school.
Thank you. So to build on what Claudia was talking about, I think there are two additional things I would like to elaborate on related to the social capital that we build. So the first is the extended curriculum that Claudia was talking about. And as she said, when students come to us at LAE, we make it clear to them that it's a lifestyle that they're buying into. They're not coming here just to sit in some lessons and then go home. It's a full and enriching and packed day. And what we found is that actually that full day that we provide, in addition to just the academic teaching, actually supports and enhances that the academic outcomes rather than taking away from it. So what do we do as part of our extended curriculum? Well, we do a number of different things. So in year 12, every student will participate in what we call the outreach program. Now, this is community volunteering. So all students every week, Friday afternoon, will go out into the local community and they will volunteer, often in primary schools, sometimes their previous secondary schools, also in care homes, in hospices, in charity shops, etc. Now, this clearly is important for them. It builds vital skills, it builds employability skills, and also emphasises one of our core values of kindness. And it also makes a difference in our community as well. In addition to this, on a Thursday afternoon, every student participates in our sports and wellbeing program. So they all go out and they can choose from a wide variety of different sports, be that your classic football or netball, going to more unusual sports. We've done rock climbing, rowing as well. Now, this is something that normally in a post-16 environment is optional. For us, it's incredibly important and part of the co-curriculum. On a Wednesday afternoon, every student will participate in our clubs and societies programme, often leading their own clubs and societies. So this could be everything from photography to politics, philosophy. We have board games, we have go clubs, chess clubs. Really, we've got 20 different clubs all going on at the same time. Everything they have an interest or a passion in, they have an opportunity to develop. Claudia mentioned our lecture programme. On a Wednesday afternoon, we have a great programme of visiting speakers who enhance and talk about the subjects beyond the curriculum. And so really it is the case that at LAE we put a lot of emphasis on that life outside of the classroom, and we attempt to bring that all together through a certificate that we call the LAE Diploma. And this is something that our year 12s, our 16-year-olds, every week, but over the course of their first year, will build all the evidence of their personal development that we are providing through all of these different opportunities, and that culminates in an interview, and we then recognise blue diplomas, those who have met the requirements, and gold diplomas, those who have gone above and beyond. So that's our co-curricular. And then the second thing I'd like to shine a light on is our emphasis on student leadership. We've got the most passionate, aspirational, able young people you can imagine working with. And it's so important for us that we can give them the opportunities to develop their leadership. And we do that in a number of different ways. We have what we call our networks, and these are student leadership groups around different equality issues. So we have our gender equality network, our BAME network, our mental health network, our eco network, and our LGBTQ+ network. Each network is led by students with a staff affiliate, and they are responsible for promoting their particular issues in the school, for campaigning, providing support in the school, and also what we're focusing on this year is also making a difference in their area in the local community. We also have wellbeing ambassadors, we've got school council, we've got leadership institutes. We're really throwing huge amounts of opportunities at our students to develop their leadership. And every week on a Friday at around 6 o'clock, they get what we call the LA Weekly Bulletin that is packed full of opportunities for them to extend themselves and to develop their skills in different areas. So for us, to be an LA student, it's about, yes, excelling academically, but also so much more than that.
Thank you, Ben. And we're going to take questions in just a moment, but I suppose just to pick out a couple of points that you both made, Ben, if I start with you. And as you pointed out, that's That's at first hearing, it's an overwhelming amount of activity taking place within the school, an overwhelming a demand, in a sense, on the young people in our care. As you rightly pointed out, it's quite common, it's more common than not, in the UK context. Schools will offer some of those things, but typically on a voluntary basis. And the word that you very artfully avoided using is compulsory, but it's certainly more compulsory than not. If students come to LE, that they should be taking part in all of those activities. How do we cope with potential pushback, or how common is pushback among our, as you rightly point out, highly motivated, highly aspirational students?
I think that there's 2 points to emphasise there. The first is that we're very, very clear about what it is to be an LAE student in our marketing, in all the outreach, the talks we give to prospective students in our open days. It's clear for students, even before they walk through the door for their first day at LAE, just what they should expect as an LAE student. So their induction begins far before their first day at the school. So I think that's the first point. And then the second point is also the support of all of this additional things that we provide within the pastoral life of the school. And so every student has a personal tutor that they see twice a day. We have heads of house who provide pastoral support. We've got school counsellor. We've got lots of wellbeing programs and initiatives. All of these help support and build the resilience and that chance to talk to someone if it does feel too much, so that we get them ready for life beyond the school, when really they need to be able to be surviving in these environments, perhaps without the type of support that schools provide.
I mean, I think those are both really important points in terms of constructing school culture. So I mean, it's very important, certainly to me, and also Claudia, links to a point you made about being a collegiate environment rather than a competitive environment. I mean, something that I often say to people is that we're an unashamedly academically elite institution, but we're very definitely a socially inclusive and equalitarian environment. And getting those two things in balance is, of course, critical to the school's success. But I also want to come back to you, Claudia, about the point you made about our teachers, about the investment in ensuring that we have the right people, subject enthusiasts, subject evangelists. If we were able to extend this virtual experience to people so that they could see what was happening in the classrooms around this room, what would they see in LA lessons that you would say is special? Not say it's not happening elsewhere, but that we would regard as special features in our lessons.
I think it's what feels special. I know when people from other schools come to observe, and I know when I started teaching here, is the amount of engagement of the students in their subjects as well. So nobody's a passenger, students are active and engaged, and there is real subject specialism. So there is the pedagogy, there is the the classroom management that's going on, but also there's subject specialism that you perhaps don't always find at school level. It might be more found at university level.
Yes, I mean, it's probably worth pointing out that our teachers are incredibly well qualified. So the vast majority, almost all of our teachers will certainly have master's degrees, but about a third of them have PhDs. I mean, that in the context of a maintained school is quite extraordinary. So, and that's of course only one measure of subject expertise, but it's a fairly important measure. Certainly, we have a lot of people who are very happy to, in young person's parlance, geek out about their subject all day, every day, and that energy is very definitely infectious. Claudia and Ben have both been at the school for longer than I have. I should say, I suppose I should turn to you both. I mean, how do you think the environment has changed over the time that we've been operating? Because quite a lot has happened in the world, and we haven't been entirely immune from all of those changes. Ben, what strikes you about your several years with the school and how it's changed over that time frame?
I think what I've seen is the strengthening of what has always been part of the school. So those are things such as the core values of the school, the articulation of what the mission is and the vision statement. I think all of those were clear at the startup, but they've been strengthened over time through years of continually improving our effectiveness, for years of us seeing what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to tweak, what do we need to change. And I think we're at a point point now, 9 years in, where we've got a model that we're incredibly confident in, and that's happened due to strong reflection, strong evaluation, and making the changes that we need to make.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's academically, I think that same confidence really has embedded itself, so that I think when we started, we were perhaps thinking that let's get everybody to a point where they can apply to a solid, good Russell Group university. And now I think we're at a point where every single student is striving to get the very top grades to go to the very, very competitive universities. And there isn't a teacher in the building that thinks that there is a student in the building that couldn't do that. So I think earlier I made it sound like our teachers come here as the finished article of all these amazing subject specialists and teachers. The other big change we've had, I think, is the development of our own teacher development programme, really good professional development. And I know I've changed a lot as a teacher and learned a lot as a teacher through my time at LAE.
And I think again that's really, really important. I mean, you can't necessarily teach someone to be a subject enthusiast if they aren't already, but how they translate that into student progress is, of course, something that we can definitely do work with colleagues on. And professional development is prized within the school. There is huge buy-in to professional development on the part of our colleagues, and much of it directly led by colleagues at the coalface. And that, I think, again, is a really important part of what's been achieved here, and something that if we had an infinite amount of colleagues' time, we'd spend even more time talking about. Okay, I think at that point it probably makes sense to take some of the questions that may have come in. Sorry, and we are just pausing because of a technical issue, but we will be with you. What time is it? Okay, so we have a question about sort of building students' aspirations. I think possibly because we've talked about how aspirational our young people already are. But yes, I mean there is a program of work, a piece of work to be done there around, as you mentioned, Claudia, at the very end there, encouraging students to apply not just for solid university choices, but also really to push themselves for the best possible university they can in their particular area. Would you like to speak to that first?
Yeah, thank you. Students that come here tend to be aspirational in the first place. Ben was talking about the fact that we're very upfront about what the mission of the school is, what the purpose is, and we help provide opportunities so that those aspirations can be fulfilled, that what starts off as a kind of a dream almost becomes quite a concrete goal, and then we can make sure that there are the opportunities and training and guidance and all the sort of boring bits to help them actually make sure that they get the grades, for example, to meet those aspirations. Because it's all very well having the aspirations, but if you don't get the grades to do it, then you're not going anywhere. So we make sure that all that is in place. And also I think we help make sense of those aspirations in really guiding students carefully. Are these the right aspirations? So a lot might come here with one idea because they're thinking about these and they're quite young children really. They're 14 or 15 when they're beginning to decide on their subject choices and what they might want to do. So we help them to form those aspirations through really good guidance, through the opportunities bulletin that Ben talked about, and through very, very careful careers and university guidance.
So we have another question just coming in which relates quite directly to that, which is around how do we support students to make those choices. I think the question is at quite a technical level. So what are the steps we go through? So would either of you like to answer? Ben, would you like to jump in on that?
Claudia would be best.
Yeah, so I think, almost as soon as they arrive, we get them sort of settled in and making that transition to these quite challenging A-level courses. But relatively soon they start with opportunities to visit universities, to have lectures from people at universities, to think about different subjects. And although we've been talking about universities as places, actually what we do is get them to think about subjects first. So which subjects do you want to take further? To move away from thinking just about vocational courses, which a lot of our students come here thinking, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, and work backwards from that. And we talk about different pathways, different routes into those courses. And once they're really thinking sensibly about what subjects they might want to do, then we'll start thinking about choosing universities. Every student here has a tutor who they see twice a day. They have academic mentoring once a week, and the university advice is usually delivered through that tutorial programme, as well as in departments. So the sort of nuts and bolts of the applications in the second year here will be done through subject departments, but the umbrella advice over 2 years is done through tutors.
Yeah, and that distinction, that division of labour is quite important, because that's there isn't an accepted model for how you balance those two things. I think it's fair to say, from school to school or college to college, certainly in the UK. So that's quite a distinctive part of our provision. Sorry, there was another question, those questions about support, which I suspect is because we're talking about students who in general do very, very well. But there was a question there about what support we provide for students who perhaps are struggling or are experiencing challenges, be they academic or otherwise. Ben, could you talk to that?
Yeah, and I think the most important thing here is the collaboration between the pastoral and the academic team, and good communication, working together to create support plans. And it's difficult to make distinctions between why somebody may not be making progress. Is it because of a pastoral issue? Could be well-being, a home issue. Is it because of an academic issue? That they often overlap. So the most important thing, I think, is about really good communication, working together to create a support plan. Support plans would then have a number of actions and interventions associated. Pastoral interventions might be assigning a mentor, putting in touch with a school counsellor, peer mentoring. If it's more complex, obviously working with local services, doctors, social workers, etc. All of that would be the pastoral plan, and then the academic plan. There's interventions that we will put in place academically.
Yeah, so the academic interventions, we try to avoid them as much as possible, and they get a lot of teaching. They get 10 hours a fortnight per A level, which is the sort of higher end of what most providers can do. So classroom intervention is probably the quickest and most effective way of addressing that. And again, communication is key, of teachers knowing that particular students are having difficulties. We also have timetabled small group interventions outside the classroom to give sort of short, sharp shock interventions to try to help students make rapid progress. And kids will be timetabled into that, and those are compulsory, and we keep track of attendance to those and track to see if it's making a difference. And this overlap Ben mentioned with the pastoral and academic, we have a small number of students every year who are finding their academic life challenging and their home life challenging, or have pastoral or health issues, and they will be in a focus group where they get meetings and support from a learning coach and the academic team, and they'll sit together and help each other as well, because sometimes I think it can be very lonely for students in an environment which is very successful, whatever success means, and it's really nice for them to know that there are other students facing those challenges as well.
So, I mean, I think it's important when we talk about the support or we talk about the interventions, just to sort of re-emphasise the sort of design principles that govern all of those things. And those very much are, in a UK context, governed by principles of quality first teaching. So the bulk of the success, the bulk of the input, the bulk of progress that will be made as a result of work taking place in lessons and through independent study. But all of the things that my colleagues have just described, obviously tremendously important in terms of making sure that students can feel and be successful during their 2 years with the school. So I think possibly we have time to take one more of these questions. Just in terms, there's a question here about our partner schools and the extent of their involvement. Do our students study at? I mean, no, they do not. Our students, they are very definitely educated here by LAE staff. It is the case that some partner schools provide some staff on secondment, but typically only for a day or possibly 2 days a week, which means that they are for the most part supplementing the academic diet that they receive as part of our core provision. We're not propped up in quite that way. That would be an unreasonable expectation of our partner schools, and also would not make for a sort of resilient offer on our part. So no, the bulk of the progress that our students are making, bulk of their tuition, almost all of their tuition is here and is delivered by LAE employed teachers, working in the way that we've described. Okay, I mean, I think we've covered certainly in spirit the topics that seem to be coming up in the chat function. So with that, I'm going to call this part of our presentation to a close. And thank you very much for tuning in, for learning something about our school. You can, of course, find us online and reach out to the extent that if you would like to. You should see on your board our key takeaways from today's presentation. So just to recap those, we feel very strongly that the success of the school depends very directly on the expertise and industry of our teachers, and we think it's very important that when recruiting teachers, you recruit subject evangelists, people who are passionately committed to their area of their domain expertise. Once you have those people, we think it's equally important that they are teaching to the subject domain. So implied by everything that we've said today, obviously we have to prepare students for specific examinations at specific points in time, but that will never take the place of genuinely cultivating an appetite and enthusiasm for a subject domain that we hope will be lifelong, and that needs to be taking place in the classroom every day. It's really important that academic enrichment is not something that takes place either in a bubble or is applied only to a small subset of students. But as far as this school is concerned, academic enrichment is an entitlement for all. So, as been described, we have a fairly assertive way of ensuring that all of our students have their learning enriched in one way or another, and we would strongly encourage others to follow that example. We do believe that understanding achievement at the most granular level is particularly important when you are dealing with students who are achieving at a very high level. It can be the case that national systems of assessment are sort of better at passing achievement sort of towards the middle of the bell curve than they are towards the tails. We feel very strongly that if you're really going to push students for ever greater results, then you need to understand their current and their forecast achievement at a really detailed level in subject areas. And finally, and in many ways, most importantly, it can never be the case that an investment in culture and in character development will not pay off. It always pays off, and it is always utterly fundamental to any school's success. It certainly has been fundamental to the success of this school. So I would like to thank everybody who's tuned in today. I hope you've found something of value in today's presentation. If you would like to reach out to us, or if there is more insight that we can shed, please feel free to do so. You can find us online at lae.ac.uk. Thank you for your time today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of World Education Week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Join Time Magazine's lead education reporter alongside global educators and advocates to explore the impacts of teaching forgiveness.
I teach forgiveness because it can have a positive impact in my students' families.
It helps my students thrive in the face of adversity.
Students who can forgive are happier.
Join us to hear from teachers and thought leaders on how and why